If you conduct a general survey and ask people, what is it that you worship? And can you list down 5 items, 5 things, objects, people, places, anything that you worship? Nobody would list the ego. Or would people do that? No, nobody. And nobody would say that they don't have 5 things to worship. And worship, here we are talking of not necessarily in a religious sense. Worship is devotion. What is it that you are devoted to or committed to? What is it that you hold as high and worth attaining? So people would be able to put down the 5 things that they worship. But very rarely would you find the word ego in this list of 5 things. So why do we worship so many other things if centrally we all worship nothing but the ego? All these things that we appear to be worshipping are the things that strengthen the ego. So maybe we do not worship the ego directly, but we worship it indirectly by worshipping the servants of the ego. And that's an even deeper worship, is it not? I worship the ego so much that I am prepared to worship all those things that serve the ego. In other words, I worship the ego so much that I am prepared to worship the servants of the ego. For example, your ego is bolstered by money, so you may start worshipping money. For example, your ego is bolstered by some kind of knowledge, or by being at a particular place, or by proving a point to the other, or by being in a particular way, cultivating a personality of a particular type. And you will start doing all those things just for the sake of the ego. All that is nothing but ego worship. So, generally, whenever you would ask, "Sir, what is it that I worship?" I really don't have to think about the answer. You have to figure out the ways in which you worship the ego. You have to figure out the appendages of the ego that you worship. You have to figure out the concrete ways that apply to your particular case. Those ways might differ. One might worship the ego as his beloved wife. One might worship the ego as his bank account. One might worship the ego as his political power. One might worship the ego as his bohemian ways. One might worship the ego as the idiosyncrasies of his personality. All those things can change, the names and forms, the particularities. But the central fact remains the same.